I discovered my wife is using our pet cam to chat with her boss. It started with a notification, just a little ping on my phone, the kind you get when a motion sensor is triggered. Except we didn't have any motion sensors. Not outside, not downstairs. I was in the home office, trying to wrap up a freelance project, the kind that pays just enough to keep the lights on and the fridge stocked, but not enough to ever feel truly comfortable. It was late, almost midnight, and the house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the occasional creak of the old house settling. I just finished a particularly cruel paragraph, feeling that familiar, dull ache behind my eyes, and I reached for my phone, scrolling through the usual meaningless updates, when that notification popped up again. Strange. I swiped it away, assuming it was some kind of app glitch, but then it happened a third time, and a fourth. It was coming from the Pet Pal app, the one Sarah insisted we get for when we're out, and the dog, Buster, gets anxious. We rarely used it, Buster being a pretty chill old lab, but Sarah loved the idea of checking in on him, cooing at him through the tiny speaker. Or so I thought. So I opened the app, a little annoyed, ready to find out what dumb notification it was turning out. And that's when I saw it, the live feed. Our living room, exactly as it should be. The worn-out couch, the rug with the coffee stain I'd never quite scrubbed out, Buster snoozing in his favorite spot by the fireplace. All normal. But then the little red light on the pet cam blinked. It was on, and the audio was live. I'd never really paid attention to the audio feature before, just the video. I'd figured, who's going to be talking to Buster when he's asleep? So I tapped the microphone icon, just to see. "Yeah, I know, baby, it's late," a voice whispered. It wasn't Sarah's voice. It was a man's voice, deep, a little gravelly, and utterly unfamiliar. My blood ran cold. What the hell? Was someone in the house? I froze, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. I strained to hear over the sudden roaring in my ears. Buster stirred, let out a soft groan, but didn't wake. The voice continued, softer now. "Just wanted to make sure you were settled. You looked a little stressed earlier." Stressed? Who was this guy talking to Buster? Was this some kind of weird prank? Sarah wouldn't do that, not to me. I gripped my phone tighter, my knuckles white. The camera panned slightly, as if whoever was holding it was moving. I could see a sliver of the hallway leading to the kitchen. Nothing out of the ordinary, but the audio was clear, intimate. "I miss you," the man said, and the words hung in the air, heavy with a meaning that had nothing to do with a dog. My stomach twisted. Miss who? Who the hell was he talking about? I started to feel a tremor in my hands. This wasn't a prank. This felt wrong, deeply wrong. I had to see who this was. I frantically tapped around the app, trying to find a way to move the camera to get a better angle. I remembered Sarah showing me how to do it once, a quick demonstration she'd given when she first set it up, saying, "It's got pan and tilt, honey, so you can follow Buster wherever he goes." Pan and tilt. My fingers fumbled over the controls on the screen. I nudged it left, then right. The image shifted. I could see more of the room now, the edge of the dining table, the framed photos on the wall. Then, slowly, deliberately, I tilted it upwards. And there she was, Sarah, standing just out of frame, her face illuminated by the dim glow of the pet cam, her eyes closed, a soft, almost serene expression on her face as she listened. She was wearing her favorite silk robe, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She looked peaceful, but she wasn't alone. I could hear the man's voice again, closer now, from somewhere just beyond the camera's view, his words barely audible, a murmur against the silence. "You're so beautiful when you're like this. So real. Real." What did that even mean? My own breath hitched. I felt like I was being punched in the gut. My mind raced, trying to piece together this impossible puzzle. She was listening to another man, calling him by some pet name, talking about missing him, and she was using the pet cam. Our pet cam, the one meant for our dog. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't about Buster. This was about them. This was a secret conversation, conducted through a device meant for our pet, in our own home. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to rip the phone out of my hand, but I couldn't. I was frozen, a spectator to my own unraveling. I needed to know more. My thumb hovered over the record button. I had to have proof. I had to understand. But as I prepared to hit it, Sarah's voice, surprisingly clear and steady, cut through the heavy silence. "Yeah, I know, darling. Me too." Darling. She called him darling. The world tilted. It wasn't just a conversation. It was something more, something far more devastating. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me.
I lowered my phone slowly, my hands trembling so violently I could barely hold it steady. My gaze drifted to the framed photos on the wall, a collage of our life together. Us at the beach, laughing. Us at our wedding, so young and full of hope. Us with Buster as a clumsy puppy. Each image was a stab to my already bleeding heart. How long had this been going on? Who was he? Was he someone I knew? The questions swirled, a vortex of suspicion and pain. I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine, a feeling of being utterly, irrevocably betrayed. I wanted to deny it, to find some logical explanation, but the evidence was right there, playing out on my screen. The way she looked at the camera, the soft intimacy in her voice, the sheer audacity of using our pet cam for this, it all painted a picture I couldn't ignore. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the live feed still going, the soft murmurs of their clandestine conversation, a phantom symphony of my destruction. I was trapped in a nightmare, my own living room transformed into a stage for infidelity. I finally forced myself to look away from the screen, my eyes stinging, my throat tight. I couldn't bear to watch anymore, but the words, "Darling, me too," echoed in my mind, a relentless drumbeat of despair. I didn't know what to do. How could I confront her? How could I even begin to process this? I was drowning in a sea of confusion and hurt, and I knew with a terrifying certainty that my life had just irrevocably changed. I felt a primal urge to lash out, to shatter the illusion of normalcy, but a chilling pragmatism held me back. I needed to be smart. I needed to understand the scope of this, so I stayed silent, a ghost in my own home, the glowing screen of my phone a window into the wreckage of my marriage. I had to know everything, every secret, every lie, and for the first time I felt a flicker of something other than despair, a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. This is just the beginning, folks. If you're feeling this kind of gut-wrenching betrayal, or if you've ever wondered what your partner is really up to, hit that subscribe button right now. Don't miss a single second of this story. Like this video if you're hooked, share it with anyone who needs to hear this, and drop a comment below with your thoughts.
What would you do if you were in my shoes? Let's talk about it. I need to know I'm not alone. The next morning was a blur of forced smiles and mundane routines. Sarah, bless her oblivious heart, was her usual chirpy self, humming as she made coffee, asking about my sleep, her eyes bright and clear. Too clear, I thought, a bitter taste rising in my mouth. I watched her, searching for any flicker of guilt, any hint of the woman I'd seen on my phone just hours before. Nothing. She was the perfect wife, the perfect picture of domestic bliss. It was unnerving. I managed a few monosyllabic responses, my mind replaying the night's events over and over. I felt like a fraud, a participant in a charade I desperately wanted to escape. Buster, thankfully, was his usual slobbery, tail-wagging self, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in our lives. He nudged my hand with his wet nose, seeking his morning scratch, and for a moment I found a sliver of comfort in his simple affection. He was the only honest creature in this house. The tension in the air, however, was thick enough to cut with a knife, at least for me. Sarah seemed to sense something was off, her humming faltering for a beat as she poured coffee into my mug. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked, her brow furrowed slightly. Her gaze was steady, almost too steady. "You're a little quiet this morning." I forced a smile, trying to channel the casual indifference I'd practiced in my head. "Just tired," I said, my voice sounding unnaturally rough. "Late night with work." She nodded, accepting the explanation without question. "You need to take a break sometime," she said, her voice laced with that familiar, soothing tone that now felt like a venomous lie. "You're always working so hard." I almost choked on my coffee, working hard to provide for us, while she was, what? Whispering sweet nothings to her boss through our dog cam? The irony was almost too much to bear. I got ready for work, the routine of familiar armor I donned to face the world. The drive to the office was a torturous loop of questions and accusations playing out in my mind. Who was he? Was he married? Did she love him? The questions gnawed at me, each one a tiny shard of glass puncturing my already fragile composure. I kept replaying the scene from the night before, her expression, the intimacy, the way she whispered, "Darling." It wasn't just a fling, it felt deeper. And the fact that she was using the pet cam, it was so brazen, so incredibly careless, or perhaps in its own twisted way, strategic. She knew I rarely checked the app. It was a blind spot, a secret channel. A sick feeling churned in my stomach. I had to know more. I couldn't just let this fester. I spent my workday in a fog, my focus shattered.
Every notification on my phone sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, my heart leaping into my throat, only to sink back down in disappointment when it wasn't from Sarah or from the Pet Pal app. I found myself constantly glancing at my phone, my thumb itching to open the app again, to see if the feed was still live, to see if he was still there. But I resisted. I couldn't let myself become consumed by it. Not yet. I needed a plan, something that wouldn't blow up in my face. I remembered Sarah mentioning her boss, Mark, a few times. He was older, apparently very successful. She spoke of him with a sort of detached respect, mentioning his demanding nature, his high expectations. I'd always assumed it was just professional talk. Now a sickening possibility began to take root. Could it be him? The voice on the tape, it was deep, but not so deep that it couldn't be Mark. And the intimacy. Was this what happened behind closed doors? Was this the secret life Sarah led? I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, at the thought of her betraying me with someone she claimed to merely respect. The drive home was even worse than the morning commute. I felt a growing desperation, a need to confirm my suspicions. As I pulled into our driveway, the familiar side of our house, our sanctuary, felt alien, tainted. I walked inside, and the scent of Sarah's perfume, usually a comforting aroma, now seemed cloying, suffocating. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, still humming. Buster greeted me with his usual enthusiastic, slobbery welcome. I knelt down, burying my face in his fur, trying to find solace in his unconditional love. "Hey, boy," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "You're a good dog." Sarah came over, wiping her hands on her apron. "Rough day?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, unable to meet her gaze. "Just a lot on my mind." She placed a hand on my shoulder, her touch both comforting and incredibly painful. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" she said. The words were like a physical blow. Talk to her? About what? About discovering her secret life? About the man whose voice I'd heard whispering to her through our pet cam? I pulled away gently. "I know," I said, forcing a strained smile. "Just need to unwind." I retreated to the living room, leaving her in the kitchen. The silence was deafening. I sat on the couch, Buster settling at my feet. My eyes scanned the room, searching for anything out of place, anything that might offer a clue. My gaze fell on the pet cam, mounted on the bookshelf, its small, innocent-looking lens staring out at the room. It felt like a weapon, a silent witness to my unraveling. I wanted to smash it, to rip it down and destroy it, but I knew I couldn't, not yet. I needed it. It was my only link to the truth. I picked up my phone again, my heart thudding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This time I didn't hesitate. I opened the Pet Pal app. The live feed loaded, showing the empty living room. Buster was at my feet, his tail thumping softly against the rug. Sarah was still in the kitchen. The camera was on, but the audio was silent. I waited. Minutes ticked by, each one an eternity. I scrolled through the app, looking at old recordings, trying to find anything that might offer a clue. Nothing. Just Buster chasing his tail or sleeping. Then a notification, not from Pet Pal. A text message. From Sarah. To me. Subject. "Dinner smells good." I felt a cold knot of dread form in my stomach. I knew with a sickening certainty that something was about to happen. I braced myself, my thumb hovering over the screen. I had to be ready. I had to be strong. My life was on the line. I opened the text. It was short, just a few words. Words that would shatter what little remained of my composure. "Mark will be joining us for dinner tonight," it read. Mark, the name I'd been dreading. My breath hitched. He was coming here? To our home? For dinner? I stared at the message, the words blurring before my eyes. This wasn't just a casual affair. This was something far more deeply entrenched. My mind reeled. Was this a test? Was she trying to gauge my reaction? Or was it simply her routine, a comfortable arrangement she had with her boss, an arrangement that now included our dinner table? I felt a surge of panic, quickly followed by a chilling, icy anger. He was coming here, to my home, to eat dinner with me. The man she was whispering, "Darling," to. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to vomit. The dog cam, the whispered secrets, the intimate confessions, they all culminated in this moment. He was coming over, and I had no idea how I was going to get through it.
The doorbell rang, a cheerful, innocent sound that felt like a death knell. My eyes snapped open. Sarah called out from the kitchen. "Oh, that must be him. I'll get it." My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate for escape. I stayed frozen on the couch. Buster nudged my hand again, as if sensing my distress. I watched the doorway, my entire being tensed, waiting for the man who had invaded my life and my home to walk through that door. The sound of Sarah's laughter, light and welcoming, drifted into the living room. Then, a deeper voice, the voice from the pet cam, followed by Sarah's husky reply. "Come in, Mark. Make yourself at home." Make himself at home. In my home. A guttural sound escaped my throat, a choked sob of pure anguish and rage. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead, and took a hesitant step towards the kitchen. I had to see him. I had to see them together. I had to confront this nightmare head on. But as I rounded the corner, I stopped dead in my tracks. The image that greeted me was more than I could have imagined, more than I could have ever prepared for. Sarah was standing in the doorway, her arm linked with his, a radiant smile on her face. And he wasn't just a boss. He was younger than I'd expected, handsome, with eyes that held a familiar spark. A spark I recognized, a spark I hadn't seen in my own reflection for a very long time. And then, as he turned his head and his eyes met mine, the blood drained from my face. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile that sent a fresh wave of horror through me. "Hey man," he said, his voice laced with an uncanny casualness. "Fancy meeting you here." It was Tom, my college roommate, my best friend, the man who had stood beside me at my wedding, the man I trusted implicitly. He was the one Sarah was talking to. He was the one she called darling, and he was standing in my kitchen, holding my wife's arm and calling me man. My world didn't just tilt, it shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The doorbell rang, a cheerful, innocent sound that felt like a death knell. My eyes snapped open, my breath catching in my throat. Sarah's voice, as it drifted from the kitchen, was a sweet melody that now sounded like a dirge. "Oh, that must be him. I'll get it." My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate for escape. Buster nudged my hand again, his warm, wet nose a familiar comfort in the face of this alien dread, as if sensing the seismic shift threatening to swallow me whole. I remained frozen on the couch, a statue carved from disbelief and rising panic. I watched the doorway, my entire being tensed, waiting for the man who had, without my knowledge, invaded my life and my home to walk through that threshold. The sound of Sarah's laughter, light and welcoming, a sound I'd always cherished, now felt like a betrayal in itself, a performance designed to mask the rot beneath. Then, a deeper voice, a voice that had haunted my sleepless nights, followed by Sarah's husky reply, "Come in, Mark, make yourself at home." Make himself at home, in my home. A guttural sound escaped my throat, a choked sob of pure anguish and rage that I desperately tried to suppress. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead, and took a hesitant step towards the kitchen, a morbid curiosity and a primal urge for confrontation propelling me forward. I had to see him. I had to see them together. I had to confront this nightmare head-on, to peel back the layers of deception and face the ugly truth. But as I rounded the corner, my vision blurring with unshed tears and a suffocating wave of nausea, I stopped dead in my tracks. The image that greeted me was more than I could have imagined, more than I could have ever prepared for. Sarah was standing in the doorway, her arm linked with his, a radiant smile on her face that seemed to mock my very existence. And he wasn't just a boss. He was younger than I'd expected, handsome, with eyes that held a familiar spark. A spark I recognized with a sickening jolt, a spark I hadn't seen in my own reflection for a very long time, a spark of youthful exuberance and unburdened charm. And then, as he turned his head, his gaze sweeping past Sarah to meet mine, the blood drained from my face. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile that sent a fresh wave of horror through me, a smile that spoke of shared secrets and stolen intimacy. "Hey man," he said, his voice laced with an uncanny casualness that was a chilling echo of our college days. "Fancy meeting you here." It was Tom, my college roommate, my best friend, the man who had stood beside me at my wedding, a witness to my vows, my confidant for years, the man I trusted implicitly with my deepest secrets, my ambitions, my fears. He was the one Sarah was talking to. He was the one she called darling, and he was standing in my kitchen, holding my wife's arm and calling me man. My world didn't just tilt, it shattered into a million irreparable pieces, each fragment sharp and jagged, slicing through me with every passing second. The carefully constructed facade of my marriage, the foundation of my life, had crumbled into dust, and I was left standing in the ruins, utterly exposed and alone. Sarah's head swiveled from Tom to me, her smile faltering for a split second, replaced by a flicker of something unreadable. Surprise? Guilt? It was gone as quickly as it appeared, her expression smoothing back into that practiced, serene mask. "Oh, honey," she chirped, her voice a little too bright. "You're home early. I didn't know you were coming. This is Mark. Mark, this is my husband." She gestured between us, a casual, almost dismissive sweep of her hand, as if introducing two colleagues at a company picnic. Mark. He was still Mark to her, or at least that's what she was telling me. But I knew. The voice,
The words, the shared glances. It was Tom. My Tom. The betrayal was a physical force, pushing me back, stealing the air from my lungs. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to demand an explanation, to shake him until the truth spilled out of him. But my body refused to obey. I could only stand there, a silent observer to my own undoing, my gaze locked with his. His eyes, usually so open and friendly, now held a glint of something predatory, something that confirmed every horrifying suspicion that had been festering within me. He met my stare, and the casualness in his voice the moment before evaporated, replaced by a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. He knew, I knew. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, a violent undercurrent beneath the surface of polite introductions. "Right," he said, his voice a low rumble, a stark contrast to the playful tone he'd used moments before. "Your husband, of course." He didn't extend a hand. He didn't offer a friendly clap on the shoulder. His smile was gone, replaced by a grim neutrality that was far more unsettling than any anger. Sarah, caught between us, her hand still loosely linked with his arm, shifted her weight uncomfortably. "Mark is a friend," she corrected, her voice a little strained now, "from work. He was just dropping by to discuss some project ideas." Project ideas. The lie was so transparent, so pathetic, it was almost insulting.
I felt a primal urge to laugh, a hollow, hysterical sound that threatened to erupt from my chest. Sarah, the ever-perfect hostess, the wife who always knew the right thing to say, had completely miscalculated. She had planned this, a clandestine meeting disguised as a business dinner, and I had walked right into it, the unsuspecting fool. The casual, fancy meeting you hear was no accident. It was a taunt, a confirmation. He knew I knew, and he was reveling in the chaos. I finally found my voice, though it was a hollow rasp, barely audible. "Mark?" I repeated, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. I thought you were Mark, Sarah's boss." The question hung in the air, thick with unspoken accusation. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, a flash of something akin to fear crossing her face. Tom's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He took a small step away from Sarah, creating a subtle but significant distance between them. "My name is Tom," he said, his voice calm, measured, and unnervingly steady. "Tom Harrison. I work with Sarah, but He paused, his gaze flicking to Sarah, then back to me. "We've known each other a long time. From before." Before. The word hung heavy, pregnant with unspoken history, with shared memories that now felt tainted, perverted. Before our marriage, before this life, before the betrayal. Sarah finally pulled her arm away from him, her face a mask of forced composure. "Yes, honey," she said, her voice a little too sweet. "Mark is, well, that's what I call him sometimes. It's a little inside joke from the office. He's actually Tom. Tom Harrison. He's been a great colleague." A great colleague. The sheer audacity of it all was staggering. She was still trying to lie, to spin this into a believable narrative, even as the truth was staring us all in the face. My gaze shifted back to Tom, searching his face for any sign of remorse, any hint of the friendship we once shared. But I found nothing, only a cool, detached expression that chilled me to the bone. He was good at this. He was always good at putting on a front. We were college roommates, after all. I'd seen him charm his way out of every scrape, every tight spot. But this was beyond anything I could have imagined. The pet cam, the whispered confessions, the intimate endearments, it all clicked into place with a sickening finality. Sarah and Tom, my wife and my best friend. The realization was a physical blow, stealing my breath, making my vision swim. I felt a hot surge of fury rise within me, threatening to consume me. But beneath the rage, a deep, aching sorrow gnawed at my insides. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was an annihilation of everything I thought I knew, of the very fabric of my life. The scent of roasted chicken, which had filled the house moments before, now seemed cloying and sickening. Dinner. They were supposed to be having dinner. With me. Tom, the man who had once shared my deepest secrets, now a stranger wearing a mask of familiarity. And Sarah, my wife, the woman I had loved and trusted implicitly, now a complicit architect of my pain. Tom, I finally managed to say, the name feeling foreign on my tongue, each syllable a testament to the profound loss I was experiencing. "You called her darling last night."
The words were out before I could stop them, a desperate attempt to shatter the pretense, to force them to acknowledge the reality of their actions. A tense silence descended upon the kitchen, broken only by the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Sarah's face paled. Tom's gaze, which had been steady, wavered for the first time. He looked away, his jaw clenching again. That's not what happened," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Misheard. Misheard. The audio from the pet cam had been crystal clear, the intimacy in his voice, the possessiveness, it had all been undeniable. "No," I said, my voice gaining a raw edge of anger. "I didn't mishear. I heard you." And I heard her say, "I know, darling. Me too." The last word, too, felt like a knife twist, a confirmation that this wasn't a one-sided affair. She had reciprocated. She had felt it too. Sarah's shoulders slumped, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of the broken woman beneath the polished exterior. But it was quickly masked by a desperate defiance. "It's complicated," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not what you think." Not what I think? What was I supposed to think? My wife and my best friend whispering endearments to each other through a dog cam, planning clandestine meetings? The sheer absurdity of it all was almost laughable, if it wasn't so soul-crushingly painful. Tom finally looked back at me, his eyes hard, devoid of the warmth I remembered. "Look, man," he said, his tone shifting again, a subtle edge of authority creeping in. "This is awkward for everyone. Maybe it's best if I just go." He started to turn, his hand reaching for the doorknob, a convenient exit strategy. But I wasn't about to let him escape that easily. Not now. Not after everything. I stepped in front of him, blocking his path. My own anger, a smoldering inferno, finally ignited. "Go," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "After you've been sneaking into my house, whispering sweet nothings to my wife through our pet cam, after you've been calling her darling, you think you can just walk away from this?" I could see the calculation in his eyes, the wheels turning as he assessed the situation. He was still my friend, the guy I'd shared ramen noodles and late-night study sessions with, but he was also the man who had betrayed me in the most profound way possible. "It's not what you think," he said, his voice hardening. "Sarah and I, we're just friends. It got complicated. Things happen. Things happen." That was his explanation. A dismissive shrug of his shoulders, a platitude to gloss over the utter destruction of my life. My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to hurt him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I was experiencing. But I knew violence wouldn't solve anything. It would only make me as lost as they were. Complicated. I spat the word out, my voice laced with disbelief and disgust. "You call this complicated? You've been sleeping with my wife, Tom. You've been lying to me, to both of us, and you expect me to just accept it?" Sarah stepped forward, her face a mask of anguish, tears welling in her eyes. "Please, honey," she whispered, reaching for my arm. "It's not like that. Tom is right. It's complicated. We made a mistake. A mistake. A single word to encapsulate years of deception, of shattered trust, of a love I thought was unbreakable. The casualness with which she uttered it sent a fresh wave of agony through me. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A series of choices. And now I was left to deal with the consequences. "A mistake," I echoed, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. "This isn't a mistake, Sarah. This is betrayal. This is you and Tom, together, behind my back, in my own home." My gaze shifted back to Tom, who stood impassive, a stony expression on his face. "And you, Tom, my best friend, how could you do this to me?" He finally broke eye contact. His gaze dropped to the floor. "I don't know, man," he mumbled, his voice laced with a weariness that felt genuine, yet somehow hollow. "It just happened. We were both unhappy. Things fell into place. It was a moment of weakness."
For both of us. Unhappy, we were both unhappy. Was that it? Was my relentless pursuit of financial stability, my long hours at work, my constant stress about making ends meet the reason for her unhappiness? Was she looking for comfort, for validation in someone else's arms? The thought was a bitter pill to swallow. I felt a profound sense of failure, not just as a husband, but as a provider, as a man. But even that didn't excuse this. It didn't justify the years of lies, the shared secrets, the clandestine meetings. I felt a knot of confusion tighten in my chest. I was torn between the raging inferno of my anger and the crushing weight of my sorrow. And beneath it all, a gnawing suspicion began to surface. If they were both unhappy, if this had been going on for a while, then what was the pet cam? Why that specific method of communication? It felt too calculated, too risky for a simple affair. Unless there was more to it. Unless the mistake wasn't just a moment of weakness, but a calculated strategy. A way to ensure what? Control? Insurance? The possibilities spun in my head, each one more horrifying than the last. I looked at Sarah, her face etched with a mixture of defiance and regret. I looked at Tom, his composure fraying at the edges, his gaze still averted. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was far from over. The questions swirling in my mind were too numerous, too complex to be answered in this heated moment of confrontation. I needed time. I needed to understand the full scope of their deception. "Get out," I said, my voice low and strained, directed at Tom. "Get out of my house, Tom, now." He didn't argue. He simply nodded, a curt, almost imperceptible movement, and turned towards the door. But before he left, he paused, his hand on the doorknob, and turned back to face me. His eyes met mine again, and this time there was a flicker of something that looked almost like pity. "You deserve better than this, man," he said, his voice barely audible. "You really do." And with that, he was gone, the front door clicking shut behind him, leaving me alone in the echoing silence of my shattered life. Sarah stood beside me, her tears flowing freely now, her body trembling. "He's right, honey," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. We both made a terrible mistake." The words hung in the air, a damning testament to the destruction that had unfolded. But as I looked at her, at the pain etched on her face, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. The pet cam, the deliberate use of that specific device. It still felt too deliberate, too risky. Was it just a convenient tool for their affair, or was it something more? Something that pointed to a deeper, more sinister motive? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a premonition of a darkness far greater than simple infidelity. I looked at Sarah, her tear-streaked face a reflection of my own despair, and I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that this was only the beginning of my unraveling. I had discovered a betrayal, but I had yet to uncover the full truth of what had transpired, and the implications were far more devastating than I could have ever imagined. The quiet ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to mock me, each second a relentless reminder of the life that had been stolen, the future that had been irrevocably altered. I was drowning in a sea of questions, and the answers, I suspected, would be even more painful than the present reality. My gaze drifted to the pet cam, still mounted on the bookshelf, its lens a silent, watchful eye. It had been the instrument of my discovery, and I had a horrifying feeling it would also be the key to unlocking the full, terrifying extent of their secrets. I needed to retrace every step, to find every recorded conversation, every hidden detail. This wasn't just infidelity anymore, this felt like a conspiracy, and I was the unwitting victim, caught in a web of lies, spun by the two people I had trusted most in the world. The implications of Tom's parting words, "You deserve better," now took on a chilling new meaning. Was he trying to warn me, or was he simply offering a final, hollow platitude as he walked away from the wreckage he had helped create? I didn't know, but I knew one thing: I couldn't let this go. I had to find out what really happened, why it happened, and what it truly meant. The truth, no matter how painful, was the only thing that could set me free from this nightmare. I looked at Sarah, her grief palpable, and wondered if she was as lost and confused as I was, or if she held the answers I desperately sought. The silence in the kitchen was a heavy burden, a testament to the unbridgeable chasms now existed between us, and the chilling realization that the real danger might still be lurking, hidden just beneath the surface of this devastating betrayal. The silence that followed Tom's departure was a physical weight, pressing down on me, stealing the air from my lungs. Sarah stood beside me, a statue of sorrow, her tears a silent testament to the devastation we'd both wrought and endured. Buster, sensing the shift, had retreated to his bed, his usual playful energy replaced by a quiet unease.
The scent of the chicken, once an invitation to warmth and shared meals, now felt like a grotesque mockery, the aroma of a feast that had turned into a funeral. I looked at her, at the woman I'd built a life with, and saw a stranger. The love, the trust, the shared dreams, all of it felt like a meticulously crafted illusion, a mirage that had finally dissolved under the harsh glare of reality. "Honey," she whispered, her voice a broken melody, reaching out a trembling hand towards me. I flinched, recoiling as if from a burn. The touch, once a source of comfort, now felt like an invasion. "It's not what you think. It was a mistake, a terrible, horrible mistake. Mistake." The word was a pebble dropped into the abyss of my despair, the ripples spreading outwards, deepening the chasm between us. "It wasn't a mistake, Sarah. It was a calculated decision, a series of decisions. Every whispered confession, every stolen moment, every lie, those weren't accidents, they were choices, and I was the casualty." "A mistake." My voice was rough, raw, a sound I barely recognized as my own. "You call this a mistake? You call this?" I gestured vaguely between us, encompassing the shattered fragments of our home, our lives, a mistake. The rage was a molten core within me, but it was intermingled with a bone-deep weariness, a sorrow so profound it felt ancient. I was lonely," she choked out, her gaze fixed on the linoleum floor, avoiding my eyes. "You were always working, always stressed. I felt invisible. Invisible." The accusation stung more than the betrayal itself. Had I been so consumed by the need to provide, to secure our future, that I had neglected the present? Had I become so focused on the destination that I had forgotten the journey, the person beside me? The guilt, sharp and unexpected, pierced through the anger. But it didn't excuse her. It didn't justify the depth of her deception. "So you found someone else," I said, the words clipped, each one a shard of ice. "Someone to make you feel seen. Someone who was conveniently available, just like you said. Just dropping by to discuss some project ideas. How long, Sarah?"
The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. How long has this mistake been happening? Her silence was an answer. A devastating, absolute answer. Her shoulders sagged, and the carefully constructed facade she'd maintained cracked further, revealing the raw vulnerability beneath. "A few months," she whispered, the words barely audible. "Maybe 6 months. It started innocently, just talking. Ben, 6 months. 6 months of her smiling at me, of sharing our bed, of pretending everything was normal, while all along she was with him, with Tom, my best friend. The irony was a bitter, burning poison. The man who had witnessed my wedding vows, the man I trusted with my deepest fears, the man I considered family, was the one who had systematically dismantled my life from the inside. 6 months, I repeated, the words hollow. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the image of them together, the sound of their whispered intimacies. But it was seared into my mind, a permanent scar. The pet cam, the entire reason I'd even looked in the first place. It was all still there, a constant, gnawing reminder. "The pet cam," I said, opening my eyes, my gaze sharp, focused on her. "You knew about the pet cam. You knew I was watching." A flicker of fear crossed her face, quickly masked by a practiced impassivity. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb, Sarah," I said, my voice dangerously low. "You deliberately used the pet cam to communicate with him. To confess, to say, 'I know, darling, me too.' That wasn't an accident. That was a deliberate choice, a way to, what? Ensure I'd find out, or perhaps ensure you had proof of your feelings." The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Was this some twisted game? A way to force my hand? To create a scenario where the inevitable confession was delivered with a pre-recorded soundtrack? The thought of her orchestrating this entire charade.
manipulating me, using our own technology against me, made my stomach churn. It was a way to be honest, she stammered, her voice laced with desperation. Without hurting you too much. I thought, maybe if you saw, you'd understand. Understand what? That her love for me had withered and died, replaced by something she felt for my best friend. That she had chosen to confess her infidelity through a device meant for monitoring her dog. It was a twisted logic, a desperate rationalization born from guilt and fear. Understand? I laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. Understand that you found a more convenient, more comfortable way to tell me you were sleeping with my best friend. Understand that you orchestrated this entire charade, using her dog cam as your confessional. What was the plan, Sarah? Did you think if I heard it all, saw it all, it would somehow make it easier for me to accept? To just move on? She finally met my gaze, her eyes wide and pleading, but there was a flicker of something else there too, something guarded, something that hinted at a deeper layer to this betrayal. It wasn't like that, she insisted, her voice trembling. Tom and I, we were both unhappy. We confided in each other. It just happened. And the cam, it was just the easiest way to get it all out, to finally be honest. Honest. The word felt alien in this context. Their honesty was my destruction. Their truth was my undoing. And the ease with which she dismissed 6 months of deception as a simple mistake or a matter of honesty was the most damning indictment of all. Easiest way, I repeated, my voice rising. Easiest way? For whom, Sarah? For you? For Tom? Because it certainly wasn't easy for me, walking in and finding my wife in the arms of my best friend, who was calling you darling like you were his world. That wasn't easy. That was a gut punch. That was the end of everything I thought I knew. The weight of my words seemed to crush her. She sank onto one of the kitchen chairs, burying her face in her hands, her body racked with sobs. Buster, disturbed by the escalating tension, whined softly from his corner. The scene was a tableau of despair, a stark reminder of the ruins of our life. I'm so sorry, she wept, her voice muffled by her hands. You're a good man. You deserve so much better. Her words echoed Tom's. You deserve better. Was this some kind of shared delusion, a mutual understanding that they had been doing me a favor by revealing their affair? It was a twisted form of self-preservation, a way to absolve themselves of the full weight of their guilt. Better than this, I said, my voice gaining a chilling calm, a terrifying clarity. Yes, Sarah, I do deserve better than this, better than lies, better than betrayal, better than being made a fool of by the two people I trusted most in the world. I looked at her, at the sobbing wreck she had become, and felt a pang of something akin to pity. But it was quickly overshadowed by a surge of cold, hard anger. The pet cam, I said again, my voice cutting through her sobs. There has to be more to it. You deliberately used it. Why, Sarah? What were you hoping to achieve? Were you trying to make me a witness to my own destruction? To ensure that if things went south, you'd have proof of my supposed inability to keep you happy? She looked up, her eyes red and swollen, her face a mask of anguish. No, that's not it at all. Her voice was sharp, defensive. It was about transparency. After everything, after you found out, I just wanted you to see, to hear it, to know that it wasn't just some casual fling, that it meant something, and the cam, it was the only way I could think of to be completely open. Open. She called this open, this calculated, devastating reveal. It wasn't openness, it was a controlled demolition, a planned implosion. The thought of her orchestrating this entire charade, manipulating me, using her own technology against me, made my stomach churn. Openness, I echoed, the word tasting like ash. You call this openness? This is calculated. This is manipulative. You knew I'd be looking at the feed. You knew I'd hear. You used it as a weapon, Sarah. A weapon to deliver the final blow. I walked over to the bookshelf where the pet cam sat, its lens staring blankly into the room. I picked it up, the plastic cool and inert in my hand. It represented everything that had gone wrong,
the silent observer of our unraveling. I felt an overwhelming urge to smash it, to obliterate the evidence of their betrayal. But I knew that wouldn't change anything. The memories, the pain, the knowledge, those would remain. I need to see everything, I said, my voice firm, resolute. I need to see the full extent of this mistake. I need to understand why you chose this path, why you chose him. Sarah looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. It's all on the cloud, she whispered, her voice barely audible. The account, you have the login. A cold dread settled in my stomach. The cloud, the digital archive of our most intimate moments, now corrupted, tainted by their betrayal. I knew I had to go through it. I had to confront the full horror of their actions, to piece together the narrative of my own downfall. And Tom, I said, my voice a low growl, you said he was unhappy too. Was he unhappy with me, or with his own life?
Did he orchestrate this as some kind of twisted revenge? Or was it just pure, unadulterated selfishness? Sarah looked away, her silence a damning confirmation. The complexity of it all was suffocating. It wasn't just a simple affair. It was a web of deceit, a tangled mess of motivations and manipulations that stretched back further than I had imagined. I don't know, she finally whispered, her voice raw. He said he was tired. Tired of the pressure. Tired of not feeling enough. Just like me. Tired. The excuse of the weak, the uncommitted. I felt a flicker of anger, but it was quickly replaced by a profound sense of loss. The friendships, the relationships that had defined my life, all of it was crumbling around me. So, I said, my voice raspy, the words feeling heavy and final. What now, Sarah? She looked at me, her eyes swimming with unshed tears. I don't know, she whispered. The honesty in her voice, for the first time, felt real. I've ruined everything. I've ruined us. I've ruined you. I walked over to the couch, Buster lifting his head as I sat down. He nudged my hand with his nose, a silent offering of comfort. I buried my face in his fur, the familiar scent a small anchor in the raging storm of my emotions. The guilt, the anger, the sorrow, the confusion. It was all a jumbled, agonizing mess. You know, I said, my voice muffled against Buster's fur. I always thought we had something special, something real. I thought we were building something solid, something that would last. I took a deep, ragged breath. Turns out, it was all built on sand, and the tide came in. I looked at Sarah, standing there, a broken figure in the wreckage of our life. There was no grand reconciliation, no easy forgiveness. There was just the raw, ugly truth of betrayal, the realization that the man I'd considered my brother had stolen my wife, and the woman I'd promised to cherish had betrayed me with him. It was a wound so deep, so profound, I wasn't sure it would ever heal. I need space, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. A lot of space. I need to figure out what's left, if anything is left. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. The confession was over. The truth was out. But the pain, the devastation, the crushing weight of what had happened, that was just beginning. The silence in the room was deafening, punctuated only by Buster's soft whimpers and Sarah's stifled sobs. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a tomb, a monument to shattered trust and broken vows. I closed my eyes. The image of Tom's face, Sarah's smile, burned into my mind.
It was a nightmare I had walked into, and I wasn't sure I would ever wake up. The last exhale of a man who had lost everything.